Welcome to Katie Bird's Nest. I am Kate, and this is week 8 of The Artist's Way, A Spiritual Path to Higher Creativity. This is Julia Cameron's 12-week course, and I was super sick last week, or this week. Last Sunday was supposed to be the week 8 check-in, and I got sick on Saturday. I started to not feel well, and I got the whole nose, face thing, and a terrible sore throat, and fever, and all that stuff, and it kicked in for 5 solid days, and I was not really able to do a video, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to be gentle with myself, and I am going to take care of myself, so I dropped off, and I did nothing for 5 days except sleep and watch YouTube videos of movie reviews, best of the worst movie reviews for 5 days, and I didn't do any morning pages those days. I was like, no video, and I'll take a week off and get better, and my voice is still my sore throat is better, but it's not gone away, and I still have the drippy nose, and I'm not completely better, but I'm better enough to do a video now. I took the week off, and we got to get back to it, and I'm going to start chapter 9 for this next week. But yes, I took 2 weeks. I did not actually do week 8 for 2 weeks. I took the last day or two to kind of refresh my memory. Week 8 is recovering a sense of strength. And the paragraphs, or the chunks of the chapter, were titled Survival, The Ivory Tower, Gain Disguised as Loss, Age and Time, Product and Process, Filling the Form, Early Patterns and Exercise. Excuse me. So this chapter was about creative block for time, and it was kind of like, my takeaways were how other people can stunt you and can cause blocks for you around time and how long it takes to do things, and your creative growth, and just your perceptions, how other people can influence your perceptions, but then also how your perceptions can cause creative blocks for yourself. How you can create your own creative blocks around the concept of time and how long it takes to do things, and just the procrastination wheel that gets started with your own perceptions, regardless of external people telling you about things and their expectations of you. And then also what you can do to break those blocks was included in this chapter. The first time I read this chapter, I thought, wow, this is not in Julia's voice. When I read it, it was a different kind of, I thought, did someone else write this? Was she in a weird, self-help mood when she sat down and wrote this? It just felt like a totally different person wrote this chapter than her, and I don't know, it was immediately noticeable to me. It didn't feel like her authentic writing compared to all of the other weeks, the 7 weeks before. It just felt like different voice to me when I first sat down and read it, and it was kind of jarring at first, and I read it a couple of times. I did do my morning pages the first week, all of those days, and then when I got sick I didn't do them, and I've been doing them the last couple of days now. But yeah, I was stunned when I first read the chapter. It was like, this does not sound like The Artist's Way. This sounds like some self-help book, go get her done. And it felt like a really long chapter. So it took me a couple of days to really kind of have the message sink in, and to really kind of understand what recovering a sense of strength meant in this chapter, in this context. And there were, the idea that that you have artistic losses made sense. The idea that a dancer can, injure their ankle and then be down for a season. I actually know someone that happened to. They had knee surgery, and I had knee surgery myself, and so I can't be as outdoorsy and active. I can't actually ride a bike anymore, and not that I rode a bike a lot as an adult, but it was something I did a lot as a kid, and it's just the loss of being able to be as mobile as I used to be is definitely a loss. And though I'm not a dancer and it doesn't apply to me creatively, it I know someone who was a dancer and had a similar knee surgery, and now she can't be a dancer, and now she's a writer, and she's a good writer. She's trying to get published, and she's just like struggling with her writing, and she has this loss of not being able to be a dancer anymore. And she struggles with the loss, and she works on her new, she's funneled into a new art, and she's trying to switch artistic mediums, and she's doing a phenomenal job, but she still has this loss of being a dancer. And I could kind of identify with that, not in a artistic way, but in like kind of empathize with her and how it feels to have the loss of mobility. But the chapter kind of mentioned other examples of a loss, as far as there's a play, you're an actress or an actor, and there's a role that's like just made for you, and then you don't get cast for that role. And although other people might be like, oh, there's other roles, the play will go again and you can try out again, or, just now wasn't your time and there'll be other roles, but it's like deep in your core, like that was your role, and it's like a wound, and nobody else really recognizes how painful it was to lose that piece. So you're a film scriptwriter, and your script doesn't, it gets bought, but it doesn't get ultimately made into a movie, and it's just like, oh, like your dream is to have it be a movie, not just sold for the money. And it's a loss to you. It's a hit to your core as an artist. You write the book, you sell it, but then it doesn't get received well, and it doesn't, maybe it doesn't sell, and it's not like this amazing book like it's the book of your heart or something, and nobody else really cares about it. It hurts. Nobody else really recognizes that hurt, and you have to survive that loss. And that's true, but and the book talks about surviving those kind of losses, at least in the beginning of the book, and that it's a thing. It's the unmourned disappointment becomes the barrier that separates us from future dreams. It can be a block for you if to put yourself out there and then have these things like hurt and not be well received. So then the next part kind of moved into more like those are things that can hurt you and your perception of those things, and that can be blocks that you've got to grieve and mourn over them, and somehow absorb them and move past them, and somehow they're part of you, but you need to move past the block of that. And then the ivory tower section was more about external hurts, where I don't personally have a lot of experience with this because I haven't taken like creative writing classes or anything. I mean, I was in a critique group, and that was interesting for a while, but it was peers. It wasn't like mentors where I like looked up to these people. I mean, they were like other people's opinions that I took with a grain of salt of their like critique of my work. Like they made good points, but I wasn't like idolizing these people. It was like, their opinion would hurt me if they didn't like my work. Like it was more equal kind of grounds for getting critique from them. But this is talking more like about academia. You go into school and your teacher grades you and tells you all of the things that are wrong with your artwork and how damaging that can be. And you're not necessarily getting praise for being risky with your art or trying new things or making mistakes and growth that can really teach you, or like the attempt to have your own voice in your type of artwork. You're getting the structure of what an intellectual person in art would expect, and like they're trying to teach you the structure of known art instead of the growth for growth's sake. And that can be a block for people, where it's this external expectation, and they're like, this is the way art needs to be. And the idea that there's these huge, what did she say, it was like these giant trees can cast their shadows on the underbrush of younger artists and stunt their growth. And I thought, well, that's true for some people. For me, it hasn't really been an issue because I don't have these, you know, monoliths of mentors in my life. I mean, I have writers that I think are amazing writers that are in my genre, but I don't think of them as overshadowing me because I've never met any of them and they're not reviewing my work. You know, maybe someday I will be in that position where they don't think my book is any good and I feel sad about it. But, you know, I'm kind of the mindset that to each their own, and not every book is for every reader. Not everyone's interested in the same, you know, not everyone's going to be interested in my book just because I write a book. There's a lot of people have different opinions about things, and, you know, I will find my niche, and those people will love my work, and I just have to find those people. So that was the Ivory Tower, where it's like other people can cause blocks for you because of their opinions of you and your perceptions of their opinions of you, kind of expectations. Let's see, and then gain disguised as loss. So that's part of the, you know, like every end is a beginning. You know, you get to the end of a path and you either find a new path or you make a new path. But you're grieving, and so it might be hard. And there's a part in here where she says, we need to focus on what lies ahead. This can be tricky. We may not know what lies ahead. And if the present hurts this badly, we tend to view the future as impending pain. So I feel like that makes sense, because when I had knee surgery, it felt like, oh, my knee is always going to hurt. I'm never going to recover. And it's kind of been true in my experience. Like, I still have problems with my knee, but it's getting better. And, you know, maybe that's not a good example, but I injured my good knee, and now my bad knee is my good knee now. You know, my non-surgery knee is my bad knee right now. And so it kind of has flipped, and it's like, oh, my surgery knee is actually pretty solid because I've put in a lot of work to recover it. And, you know, it's the one that's stabilizing and solid for balance. And, you know, it's actually recovered more than I realized. And now I feel like when my non-surgery knee recovers from this minor injury, then I'll be solid on both knees, and that'll be good. You know, I got injured from running. And, you know, so, but this is more about, like, you know, artistic grieving and that kind of thing. But the idea that, you know, you feel pain now, it means you're going to continue to feel pain into the future. And that's not true. You know, you're making if you're making strides now, things are going to change in the future. Things aren't always going to be static your entire life. Stop complaining about the lousy curves you get thrown and reach for what you really want, is what she says in this Gain Disguised as Loss. You have to, you know, leverage your losses to use, you know, switch paths and, you know, work through the loss and move into a different thing. And that kind of goes into, you know, when faced with the loss, immediately take one small action to support your artist. Even if all you're doing is buying a bunch of tulips and a sketch pad. Your action says, I acknowledge you and your pain. I promise you a future worth having. Like a small child, our artist needs mommying. And that was what I did last week when I got sick. I was like, oh, I'm sick. I just need to lay here and take care of myself. And I let myself off the hook for doing morning pages, and I let myself off the hook for writing that for like 5 days I didn't write, and I was like, I just need to take care of myself. And I did, and now I'm back at it. So it worked out really well, but I had to take a step back and let myself off the hook and be gentle and give my artist child that mommying and just kind of step back and say, you're hurt, you know, like at that point I was physically ill, and it's not necessarily grieving over an injured ankle as a dancer or a scriptwriter whose play didn't make it into a, you know, or whose movie didn't make it into the movies, but it's kind of the equivalent where you have to step back and say, oh, I'm damaged, you know, it hurts, and I'm gonna go on an artist date and, you know, or a couple artist dates and kind of soothe my artistic child and, you know, feel bad for a little while and take the time to mourn and grieve and get over it and move on with your life, you know, but you have to take the time to actually acknowledge the loss. But you have to acknowledge it and then move forward, is what she's saying in here. You have to, you know, it's recovering a sense of strength. You acknowledge the loss and then you move forward. And so the next part is the age and time, and it's getting back in the flow and how your perception of time is that self-sabotage and causing a block for you. And there is a part in here that really kind of stood out for me, and it was, as Block creatives, we like to pretend that a year or even several years is a long, long time. Our ego plays this little trick to keep us from getting started. And the idea that, oh my gosh, it's going to take 6 months to write a book, or, you know, if you work, it's going to take, you know, maybe a year or something, or whatever's going on in your life. If it's taking that long and it's like, oh, it's only supposed to take 3 months to do this instead of a half year, and it's like, you're working at your own pace, your life is what it is, and if you can only get in the time to do so many pages a day, or, you know, so many pages a week on the weekend or something, and things keep cropping up in your life that get in the way that are legitimate, and you're working on it and you're putting in the effort to get things done, you know, that's all you can do, is to keep, you know, putting in the time. But if you think, before you even try putting in the time, if you think, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this because it's going to take too long, and you never get started, like, you have to start. You have to, like, do it. It doesn't matter how long it takes. Like, this is the problem with time, where you're psyching yourself out before you even get started. And, you know, the idea that it's going to take years to do something, or 6 months, or an entire year, or 2 years to get good at drawing portraits, you know, like, oh, I don't want to take that long. It's like, well, if you don't start now, you're never going to get good at it. You're going to waste 2 years not doing it, and then you're still not going to be any good at it, you know? Like, you might as well get started now and work a little bit now, and you'll be halfway decent in 2 years. My throat is getting dry from talking so much. But there's also a piece in here about the process. And part of the process, like, you know, you have your mourning and your grieving, and then you need to, like, get on with it, and you need to, like, get back in the flow. And the idea of the flow is, kids are not self-conscious. Like, if you're treating yourself to an artist state and being kind to your artist child, kids are not self-conscious. And once we are actually in the flow of our creativity, neither are we. You know, that's the idea of, you get in the flow and time, it becomes timeless. You know, you just cranking out words, or you're just dancing with the flow of the music, or, you know, a whole afternoon excuse me, a whole afternoon goes by and you're just painting and painting and painting like a fool, and you're in the flow, and everything's just passing by. So, you know, part of mommying your artistic child is also paving the way to get ready to get in the flow and to start getting things done. Let's see, getting back into, like, being a beginner and starting the work and thinking, okay, I'm just gonna start and see where this leads. And, you know, being a beginner, being a child, and just being curious and saying, okay, let's see where this goes. The beginner's humility and openness leads to exploration. And exploration leads to accomplishment. All of it begins at the beginning, with the first small and scary step. Oh my gosh, my throat is really dry. Okay, so, what else was there? Filling the form. Filling the form is, it's like starting with where you are with what you have, like your supplies and your skills. Like, you just need to start wherever you are. And you know, it's the idea that, you know, getting caught up in future thinking is not going to help you. It kind of goes hand in hand with that. Like, you start kind of obsessing and kind of projecting into the future, like, oh, what, I need to work full time in order to, like, make this happen. It needs to be, you know, I need to have a full studio. It's like, well, you don't need a whole studio. You can work on your kitchen table, or you can pull out, you know, your craft mat and do stuff on your desk, and then just clean it up and put it away every time until you know, you make those small incremental changes. You can you can work on it in small steps where you are at. If you don't have a big place, like all of my art journaling, I have to pull all my stuff out and work on it on my desk, and I have to work at it on my desk, or like on the floor on a cutting board on top of the craft mat, because I don't have a studio. I don't need a studio, actually. You know, working on it where I am, where I have it, is just fine. It's, you know, at least for me, that's like a little part-time fun, you know, a hobby that I'm just doing on the side. I'm not selling that kind of stuff, you know, but I have my setup for my writing. Like, this is a permanent setup. This I have up all the time. And, you know, it's easy because it's an office. Most people do have a computer set up, but I do have my laptop, so that if I didn't, you know, if I had to move someplace where I didn't have a second bedroom, oh my gosh, this is getting really bad. If I had to move someplace where I didn't have a second bedroom, I just have a laptop. So I could work in the living room, or in the single bedroom, or in the kitchen, or wherever. Oh, I'm going to need to wrap this up. My throat is really sore. I thought it wouldn't be this bad. So, filling the form is the idea. I need a place to stick this. Filling the form is the idea that you just work with what you have, with where you are, you know, your physical environment, with your supplies and your skills. And then make changes, small changes, right where you are. Fill this form with creative care until it overflows into a newer, larger form organically. Large changes occur in tiny increments. It's useful to think in terms of spaceflight. By altering the launch trajectory very slightly, a great difference can be made over time. And then early patternings and exercises, like a series of 20 questions. It's like, I remember one time when blah, 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 blah. I felt blank and blank about that. I never forgot it. It was just kind of, you know, it was interesting to fill out. And then there was an affirmations page. And then they go into the tasks, and I don't know, I didn't feel like the tasks were very helpful for me that week, as far as like recovering a sense of strength. It was like, you know, this goal search for like setting up your dreams, and it's like your dream of like what, like perfect nurturing or something. It was like, if you were, you know, write down in the perfect world what your dream would look like, and, you know, for your dream, I would secretly love to be blank, and then name one concrete goal that signals to you its accomplishment. And I was like, I already have figured this out a long time ago in this book. I know what that is. I know what it looks like. And so it didn't really feel like I was discovering anything. And it had 6 questions that went with it just for that number 1 task. And then the other 10 questions, I felt like were kind of the same way. They're like, in a perfect world, or with perfect nurturing, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, this doesn't feel like it's recovering strength. So I didn't really do any of the exercises. Like, I read them, and I was like, I don't think so. So I hope chapter 9 is better. Gosh, I thought it was better. I thought my throat was better than this. So chapter 9 is recovering a sense of compassion, and it's about facing internal blocks to creativity. So this chapter 8 was more about time and blocks about time and your perception of time, and, you know, you're getting just moving through that and getting back to being your artist child, and kind of soothing the losses in your life, and your artistic losses, but then also recognizing the procrastination to starting as well. And it kind of felt like a repeat of some of the other chapters. But it was useful, but it also kind of felt like it wasn't really written in her voice. And I don't know if this was just because I was sick and took 2 weeks to do it, where I felt kind of disconnected from this chapter. I don't know, I felt like I had a hard time. I didn't really connect with it in the beginning, and then I was sick and I wasn't doing the exercises for it, and now I'm doing the recap so much later after having been, away from it for a week. But I don't know, I feel like chapter 8 wasn't as useful for me as the other chapters had been in the book so far. So I'm hoping week 9 kind of rekindles the creativity journey for me. And I hope I get better over the next week so I can talk more, and that my throat isn't bothering me as much. So thank you for watching, and I hope to have the next video up in a week and get back on my normal schedule. Thanks.